Welcome back. This is the 21st segment out of 25 in this series, Exploring Evil and Suffering in Bite-Sized Pieces. Now, as I just stated, this series has to do with both evil and suffering. Yet most of our time has been spent looking at the questions that surface concerning evil and our responses to it. Now, one of the big reasons for that is the fact that even though not all suffering is a result of evil, evil always results in suffering. So, that by addressing the concerns surrounding evil, we are, to a large degree, addressing issues concerning suffering itself. However, let's now turn our attention to suffering. Now again, not all suffering is a result of evil. There are a lot of types of suffering that you and I go through that have no moral component to them. It's simply what happens when we go through the years living life. Now, let me remind you that I am approaching this topic in the context of a biblical worldview. And in the last segment, I pointed out that a biblical worldview can be well understood with 4 historical events which can be itemized as creation, corruption, redemption, and restoration. So we've got this biblical worldview and we've got this template. And from this template, we can begin to get 4 answers to 4 key questions that have to do with suffering. The questions are, what do we know about God? What do we know about people? What do we know about God's purposes? And what do we know about the future? So, the first question begins to be addressed in this first historical event of creation. Because the Bible teaches, in the beginning, God created. You see, creation presupposes a creator. So, this creator, God, what do we know about God? Well, first of all, we know that He loves us. Even though there are times in our lives when the circumstances that we are in would give us no indication whatsoever that He in fact loves us. We may wonder if in fact He does, given these circumstances. And so what we have to do is we have to look outside of our circumstances. We have to look beyond our immediate circumstances and remember that, as we are told in Romans 5:8, that God demonstrates His love toward us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Number 2, We know that God is omniscient. He is all-knowing. And this God who loves you knows every single minutia of the circumstances of your life and who you are and what you're going through. Number 3, along with his omniscience, the fact that he is all-knowing, he is also all-wise. He knows what is the very best for you and me. And then, 4th, we know that God is completely sovereign. He is in total control of the entire universe. I mean, there is not one single solitary, rebellious, mutinous, renegade, independent molecule in the universe. Not one that is outside of his control, because he is completely sovereign. So we put those 4 together. He is loving and omniscient and all-wise and sovereign, and you have this significant understanding of what God is like. By the way, in opposition to that, a number of years ago, a rather seductively titled book came out entitled When Bad Things Happen to Good People by Rabbi Harold Kushner. And in his attempt to address these issues, he gives us this horribly flawed book, and therefore a detrimental book. One of the chapters is entitled, God Can't Do Everything, but He Can Do Some Important Things. Wrong. God can't do everything. Yes, He can do everything. Unless it's something like making a square triangle. But there's another book that I would highly recommend rather than Harold Kushner. And this is by a gentleman named Jerry Bridges, the title of which is A Trusting God Even When Life Hurts. And by the way, this is a book that a number of years ago was a lifeline for me when I was going through some really serious depression. And on page 18, he says this, and it's worth the price of the book. In the arena of adversity, the scriptures teach us 3 essential truths about God. Truths we must believe if we are to trust Him in adversity. They are: God is completely sovereign. God is infinite in wisdom. God is perfect in love. Someone has expressed these 3 truths as they relate to us in this way. God in His love always wills what is best for us. In His wisdom, He always knows what is best. And in His sovereignty, He has the power to bring it about. What do we know about God? we can trust him in adversity.